Okay, this video is going to show how you can take a traditional worksheet that you might assign for homework and put it in Google Slides where it can be interactive and shared on Google Classroom. I'm taking an example here of a rational numbers homework assignment, and I'm just going to show how I would maybe convert this into an interactive assignment on Google Slides. So I'm going to go over here to Google Slides. I've got an untitled presentation. I'm going to delete these original boxes and I'm going to change my page setup. So for my page setup, I like to use a regular size sheet of paper, so 8.5 by 11. You can use whatever size works depending what you're doing, but for these student assignments, I like to use 8.5 by 11 because it's printable. So if I have a parent who wants to print the workout, or if I have a student who needs, if I'm at school and they want it printed out, maybe their computer isn't working or they prefer to do things on paper, then I have that option very easily. All right, so I've got the setup that I like here. If you want to zoom out a little bit so it's a little easier to see your entire page, you can. And then I'm going to go ahead and give this a title. This is a rational numbers homework. All right, start by putting in some directions here. This assignment's going to have two parts. So this is part one. Let me zoom in there. So for part one, what they're going to do is they're going to drag each number to the correct location on the Venn diagram. All right, so we have to create a Venn diagram here. I'm going to put a Venn diagram on the top half of the page, and then I'm going to put the numbers at the bottom. So for my organizer here, I'm going to use this circle, and I'm just going to make a super large oval, as large as I can. And I'm going to start with that being transparent, but I am going to come back and actually make it a color a little bit later. And then that's going to represent rational numbers. That's my largest. This is the diagram I'm recreating here. So I'm going to label that with a text box so that is rational. Oops. I'm going to center that. There we go. All right, then I'm going to do my integers inside there. So I want to make this pretty large as well and get it kind of lined up in the center. And I'm also going to start by making that transparent and make my border a little bit thicker there. All right, that looks fine. I'm going to use the same text box that I had for my rational numbers, and I'm just going to copy and paste that entire text box, Control-C, Control-V, and then I'm going to change the word to say integer instead. All right, and then lastly, we're going to have our whole numbers in the center. So I'm going to do that same thing one more time. Put in my oval, increase my border thickness, and copy and paste that little label. And this time it's going to say whole number. All right, okay, that looks fine. I do want to make each section a different color. So I'm going to start here with whole number. All right, we've got each section a different color, and now we're going to come down here and we're going to add some numbers for our students to drag up. I'm going to use this extension called Equatio, which I would highly recommend you get if you teach math, because it makes it really easy to type math in Google Slides. So I'm going to be using this equation editor feature right here. And it lets me type in anything I want. I'm going to start by typing in a fraction, and I'm going to use 3/8. So once I have typed in what I want to insert, I'm just going to hit insert math, and it's going to put that in right here as basically an image. And that image can be enlarged. That image can be, you can add a border to it if you want. You You can do really whatever you want. So I'm just going to leave that right like that. I might make it a little bit smaller. Okay, then I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to type in something else. This time I want to put a repeating decimal. So if you hit right here, you can get this feature that will give you a bar over your number. And the number that I want to be repeating is 9. And however you want to write that, I'm just going to, oops. Let's try that again. Again, I want the bar. I want it to be a 9. There we go. And then puts an A in there, so you just need to backspace that A out. All right. And then I'm going to insert that repeating decimal. And you can see it right there. Make it a little bit larger. Okay. You can also add square roots or any root, cube roots. I'm going to add just a square root here. In fact, I'm not even going to put an index at all. And we'll do the square root of 49. Insert. If you do start using Equatio, play around with it because there's like tons of cool things you can do. You can even do text, like speech input, so like talk to text, and you can say the words and it will type it in math language, which is great if you're making like a large exam or something and you have a lot of things to do. All right, let's see. I need an integer, so we'll do that. And then I need maybe like 10 over 2. Okay, now typically if I was creating this for my students, I would probably put more than 5 numbers down here, but I'm just going to do 5 for now. And you can, if you are creating a similar assignment, put as many as you want. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close out of Equatio for right now and talk to you about one more thing before we move on. Sometimes, and if you guys use this at all, you might be familiar with the fact that sometimes students accidentally drag things that they aren't supposed to. For example, they could accidentally, take this green oval and accidentally drag it over, and then their work looks all kinds of funky, and they might not know how to get it back to how it's supposed to be. So what you can do is you can actually change this slide so that all of this is in the background, and it's like a picture that they can't move. And then the only thing that's movable are these numbers that you want them to drag. So I want to show you how to do that real quick. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my numbers and I'm going to actually move them over to the side out of my way. I want them off the slide completely. And then I'm going to download this as an image file. So you're going to go to File, Download, PNG image, and it'll download the current slide onto your desktop. All right, and then you're going to replace that slide you created. We're going to add a new blank slide and put that same image in as the background. So I'm going to background, choose image, and I'm going to browse. And mine's right there in my downloads. And now it's going to come up on the background. So now the students can't accidentally drag those ovals or change the wording or delete the directions. And I'm going to come back up to my original slide and I'm just going to grab my numbers. I'm going to do Control X to delete them from the slide and then Control C, Control V. Oh, shoot. All right, I just messed up. I got on. Okay, Control X to cut and then Control V to paste. And then I can drag those back over to my slide. And that assignment is ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and delete this original slide. And then I just have this one here. I'll zoom out so you guys can see the whole thing. There it is. Okay. Obviously, you'd probably have more numbers down there, like I said before. All right. So this was part 1 of my assignment. Now I'm going to look at part 2 of this assignment. So part 2 asks students to take fractions and convert them to decimals, and then sort those fractions into 2 categories: fractions that are terminating decimals and fractions that convert to repeating decimals. So I'm not going to duplicate this exactly, but it is going to cover the same topics. So let's add a second slide so we can do part 2 here. And I'm going to start by inserting directions again, directions text box. And let's see, so for part 2, Zoom in again so you guys can see this a little better. For part 2, we're going to ask students to type the decimal that is equivalent to each given fraction. Then label the decimal, as terminating or repeating. All right, so we've got our directions there. We don't need a diagram this time. This time I'm going to use a table. So I'm going to insert a table. I'm going to do 5 questions for us for this example. You can obviously add as many as you feel like you need given the topic. And I'm going to add some thicker border lines to my table. All right. Actually, I need one more. Insert row above for my directions. So this is going to be the fraction. This is going to be the equivalent decimal. This is going to tell me, is it terminating or repeating? All right. So for our first question, I'm just going to need a fraction, and I'm actually going to use my equatio system again to input fractions onto this table. Maybe I'll fill that in with a color. All right, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to open up my equatio extension again, and I'm just going to be typing in some fractions here. Some that I want to be repeating decimals and some that I want to be terminating decimals. All right, so we've got our first one here, 5, 6. Just going to put it into one row of the table. And then I'm going to go back and add an additional fraction. So maybe we'll do 5/8. And again, drag that up into the table. Okay, I'm going to do 4/9. I'm going to do 3/10. I'm going to do 7 over 14. Try to make sure I have a good range of repeating and not repeating and terminating. So it looks like I have 2 repeating and 3 terminating, which will be fine. All right, so this is pretty much all I want on my background. So when I take that picture and I insert it into the background, it's going to be things that I don't want them to move or adjust. And in the equivalent decimal column, I'm going to be wanting them to type. So I'm not going to put anything there yet. And in the terminating or repeating column, I'm going to be actually providing them with a label to drag over. And the label is going to either say terminating or repeating. So those are all things that I need the students to interact with. So I'm going to go ahead and download this as a PNG and insert it in the background. And then I'll add those extra elements. So we're going to go again with the slide that you're on. That's the slide I want. So I'm going to go to File, Download, PNG. I'm going to add a blank slide. And I'm going to change the background. Background, choose image, browse. It should be in your downloads. There's mine right there. And now it's on the back. Okay, so again, this is not editable now. Students can't mess it up. All right, I have 2 things I need to do here. I need to add a text box here for students to write their decimals or type their decimals. And there's a couple ways you can do that. You can show your students how to use equatio just like we did, and they can insert, repeating decimals just like I showed. Or I'm sure you have also taught students to put 0.999 ... and you could have them just type it that way as well. All right, so we've got that. I like to write type here so they know that there's a place for them to type. And then we're going to need our labels for terminating or repeating. So I'm going to insert a shape here. And I'm going to use this rounded rectangle. Make it a more appealing color here. Make it a more appealing font. And I'm going to center my text. So we're going to have terminating And then I'm going to create the same thing again. I'm going to actually put that on here 5 times. All right. I know they're all overlapping with each other, but there's this really great thing you can do in Google Slides to make everything nice and organized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all 5 of those boxes, and I'm going to go to Arrange, Distribute horizontally, and it splits them up for me. Then you can also do Arrange, Distribute vertically, and it'll make sure they're all in the same place in the up and down direction. So those look great, and I'm going to take one of those. I'm going to copy and paste it so that I can make my repeating labels. And for these, I'm going to change the color just so that it's very clear and obvious that, that those are different from one another. So again, I'm going to copy and paste that 5 times across. All right, and then it looks like it's already pretty well arranged, but I'm just going to double check by doing Arrange, Distribute vertically, and Arrange, Distribute horizontally. Yep, I think they were already lined up pretty well. Okay, so this assignment is finished. I'm going to go ahead and delete the second slide. That was my original slide that I had created the table on. And now I have my 2 assignments, my part 1 and my part 2. So I'm ready to share this with students. So there's 2 ways you could go about sharing this. If you use Google Classroom, then what you're going to do is you're going to go to your Google Classroom. You're going to go to classwork, and you're going to create an assignment. Give your assignment a title, and in the instructions, I'm just going to say follow the instructions on each to complete the activities on each slide. Share or submit via Google Classroom to get credit. Okay, and then I'm going to add that actual assignment in. So I'm going to hit the add from Google Drive, and it's my most recent thing I created. So I'm going to add it there. And then over here, this is really important. This is something that we need the students to actually manipulate, and we want them to all have their own copy because we want them to get their own answers. So we're going to do students make a copy for each student. So that way each student gets their own one, and they can submit it to you on Google Classroom. All right, you can adjust the points if you want to. I usually make homework worth 10, give it a due date. If it has a due date, add a topic. Your topic could be by week, it could be by unit, it could be by quarter, whatever you're interested in. You don't have to have a topic at all if you don't want to. And then you're just going to hit assign. Okay, so here's that assignment right here. Follow the instructions to complete the activities on each slide. I don't have any students in this classroom, so that's why it says it's assigned to 0 students. This is just a demo classroom. All right, let's say you don't use Google Classroom. Maybe you're not a Google district, but you still like to create things using Google. You can still share this with students. So what you're going to do is you're going to go over here to share, and you're going to go down here to get a link. You have the option to either make that a link that's only visible for your district, your domain, or you can make it visible to anyone. I usually, when I'm sharing things with students, only make it visible to those with my domain. But if you have younger students who might be working with parents, who may not be logging in with their own email, if you just don't want to have to deal with issues of people requesting access, then you might want to go ahead and just do anyone with the link. Okay. And then you want to make sure that they're a viewer. When you give them the link, you just want them to be able to view it. Okay. So you're going to hit done. And then when you go to share that link, let's say you're going to send an email, or you're going to post it on your Google Classroom, or excuse me, this is if you don't have Google Classroom, maybe you're going to post it on your school website, or maybe you have some a virtual classroom where you're going to link it, or something like that. When you give them that link, which I think I forgot to actually hit copy, So let me copy that. There we go. When you give them that link, what you can do here is at the end where it says edit, you're going to delete those 4 letters and you're going to put copy instead. And it's going to force a copy so that they get their own version. You might want to prompt them to make sure that they put their name on that copy. It will not automatically give them a name, but when they submit it to you, I'm assuming if you don't use Google Classroom that they're going to be emailing it to you. You'll be able to tell it's theirs because it will have their email address. But depending on the age group you're working with, you may just want to make sure they, maybe you teach them to put their name in the title or add a name. You could add a name spot here. I could quickly add a text box right here that says, type your first and last name here. And then that would take care of it. So they could do that right there, and then you would have access to who it belongs to. I like to have them put it here. So S. Campbell, rational numbers homework. I tell them to put their name first, and then the assignment second. I prefer the name first. So, all right. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I appreciate that you're watching.